This
session,
conference will now be recorded.
yes, in our previous session, we were discussing about the Parthiva Dravya. Today we will see Apya Dravya. We just read the shloka from the text. Dravashida Gurusnigdha Mandasandra Rasolbanam Apyam Snehana Vishyanda Kleda Prahlada Bandhakrit. That is what a Apya Dravya is. Dravashida Gurusnigdha Mandasandra Rasolbanam Apyam Snehana Vishyanda Kleda Prahlada Bandhakrit. As we discussed in the case of Parthiva Dravya, here also we have two parts in the shloka. The first part, which depicts the Swabhava and somewhat Swarupa of an Apya Dravya. The first part. And second part regarding the karma of such a dravya when consumed by a person. Here all the terms are familiar. Drava, Shida, Guru, Snigdha, Manda, Sandra, Rasolbanam, Apyam, Snehana, Vishyanda, Kleda, Prahlada, Bandhakrit. We will see the terms. Wherever required, we will elaborate. Otherwise, we will move fast. First, we find Dravam. Dravam, the word Dravam actually shows the form, the Swarupa of the Dravya here as a characteristic. The Swarupa of Apya Dravya, which shows a tendency to flow or melt sometimes. Melt. Sometimes ooze. To ooze, to melt, to flow. That tendency is represented. Dravatvam is explained as we saw the term Gurutvam in our previous session. Adhyay Padana Asamavayi Karanam. Here it is explained as Adhyay Sendana Asamavayi Karanam Dravatvam in Tarka Sangra. So that is Dravatvam, and this Dravatvam is inherent. I mean, it is there with the Prithvi, Jalam, and Agni. That is how the Tarkikas, Tarka scholars propose, of which it is inherent or the Swabhavikam, Samsiddhikam, natural in Jala. So that is Dravata. Then Sheetam, that is next is Sheetam. Sheetam is a type of sparsha. Here we should consider it as a type of sparsha vishesha. That means something which causes the feeling of that cold if touched or when touched. That is Shita. So Apya Dravyam is cold or cool to touch. We have not seen such an explanation in the case of Parthiva Dravya. That may be recalled at this point. It is not mentioned in Parthiva Dravya. Then third is Snigdham, Drava, Shida, Guru. Guru we have already discussed, so we are not going to see it. It is well explained in Parthiva Dravya. Now next is Snigdham. What is Snigdhata? Snigdhata is explained by Tarkikas as Churnadi Pindi Bhava He Durgunaha Snehaha Jalamatra Vrittihi. Churnadi Pindi Bhava He Durgunaha. It is that guna, that property, which makes it possible to make pindi, that means a bolus or a morsel or something like a rollout out of dry powder, churnam. So it is that property. Pindi bhava heduhu, pindi bhava, the shape or that form of a bolus, a pindi. So how, or the quality or the property which facilitates making a bolus, a pindi out of churnadi. So churnam is actually a loosely packed particles. The compactness between between the particles, the kanam, is very loose. So that particular property which makes it possible to make a pindi out of churnam is known as snigdhata. Okay. Then next is mandam. Mandam has got certain meanings like soft or gentle, alasam, atikshnam. These are the meanings in general of mandam. It is very frequently used even in our day-to-day business, like mandagni or mandamaruta. So it softness or gentleness. That is what is represented by mandam. Then next is sandram. Sandram, in conventional way, we think that, or we propose that it is the opposite of dravam. And we started this entire list of qualities of apya dravyam with dravam. So it may not be or it will not be very nice to take the meaning of sandram as the opposite of dravam, because that is a conflicting idea. The same dravya is having two uh, just opposite properties. I think that doesn't suit, or that does not seem to be very nice. And there are certain other meanings for the word sandram which are relevant here. It is like hridyam or manotnyam. These sort of meanings are also there for sandram. Actually, that word meaning, as I mentioned earlier, indicates the coarse or thick part of something is known as sandram. Sandranandam, that sort of usages. But here it is more about the smooth and soft pleasing or pleasant. That meaning suits better, and that perfectly matches with an apyadravya. Okay, so sandram. Or if you take the other one as, okay, it just shows the tendency to become sandrata. If you take it as the opposite of dravam, then I think you will have to explain it as the tendency, the potential to become thick and coarse. So they may not exist together. It is actually a tendency of the drava itself. That way it should be explained. But I think that sort of a very stressful or strained interpretations are not necessary. It is not required. The other meaning suits very well with the apidravya, hridyam, manotnyam, that sort of meaning. Then resolbanam. Resolbanada is also a characteristic of apidravya. Rasam is rasanagrahyo gunaha rasaha. So, which is, I think, self-explanatory. Otherwise, we will see the details more in Rasabheti. So, an apyadravyam is having these sort of properties. Drava, Shida, Guru, Snigdha, Manda, Sandra, Rasolbanam, Apyam. Then, when such a dravya is used, consumed, Snehana, Vishyanda, Kleda, Prahlada, Bandha, Krita. These are the expected outcomes. Snehana, Vishyanda, Kleda, Prahlada, Bandha, Krita. We will see the meanings. Actually, that suits with the guna many times. Snehanam. Snehanam means something which generates sneham. Making snigdham. That is snehanam. Sneha, snigdhata. That is related to the word kledam or ardrata, the wet feeling. All these things are related to the snehanam. Vishyandanam. Next is vishyandam. Vishyandam means the tendency to trickle or ooze from a srotas. That is vishyandanam. And kledanam again is so close to these things. Skledam is explained as dehavayaveshu ardrada. Actually, these three, that means snehanam, vishyandam, and kledam, they are very similar, or even three different experiences created by the same property. Even that way, it can be understood. You may recollect that in one situation, one occasion, Charaka explains the snehanam as snehanam. Actually, it is the definition of the snehanam in the Shadupakramas. Snehanam, sneha, vishyanda, mardava, kledakarakam. See, all these things which we have seen here, sneham, vishyandam, and kledam, are explained together under the heading of snehanam. So they are almost the three different grades of experiences of the same property. That may be a proper way of understanding it. Then we find prahladanam. Prahladanam means something which causes the generation of happiness, santosham, tushti. That sense is known as prahladanam. So apyadravyas are having that peculiar property of prahladanam. Then bandham. Bandham is again a word which can be explained in more than one style. Sometimes, or in general, the general tendency of explaining this bandham is to is like something which causes bandham to the Srotas. Srodo bandhakrit. So actually, apyadravyas are having that property, maybe to some extent, at least for the sake of explanation. They can cause upalebam in the srotas. And upalebam indirectly or secondarily is going to create bandham. That is true. But I would prefer to explain it as the property which is explained by Chakrabani as bandham parasparayojanam. That makes more sense, especially when we saw the definition of sneham as churnadi pindi bhavaheduhu in the physical world. Coming to the body, I think this bandham should be explained, especially in the context of a dravya which is prominently snigdha, is the capacity to hold the things together. Avayava bandham, sandhi bandham, and that goes in perfect tune with the potential of Shleshma, what we have learned. So I think the bandham should be explained that parasparayojanam. That makes more nice reading of the, especially in this context. That is bandham. Then this Prahlada Bandhakrit, yes, that is what we completed. In other texts like Sushruta Samhita, or we have seen something in Sushruta Samhita when we saw the Parthiva Dravya. Similarly, in the same style, Apidravya is explained by Sushruta with special emphasis on the rasa factor, like Ishat Kashaya Amla Lavanam Madhure Rasa Prayam. That is how a Sushruta observes. What is the logic, or how did he come to that conclusion? All these questions are there. But I think it is very interesting. It is very interesting that an Apyadravya is Ishat Kashaya Amla Lavanam Madhura Rasaprayam Apyam. So that is how he is explaining, and the karma as Snehana, Hladana, Kledana, Bandhana, Vishyandana Karam. So that is fine. Charaka also, I think they are all somewhat same. Charaka, of course, is using some extra phrases like upakledam, like that. It's okay. It is quite normal only. Then, so that is what we have to understand about Apidravya. Now we will see an Agneya Dravya, how we should understand an Agneya Dravya. Agneya Dravyam Ruksha Tikshnoshna Vishada. That is how the sloga goes. Ruksha Tikshnoshna Vishada Sukshma Rupa Gunolbanam Agneyam. Ruksha Tikshnoshna Vishada Sukshma Rupa Gunolbanam Agneyam Daha Bha Varna Prakasha Pajanatmakam. Agneyam Daha Bha Varna Prakasha Pajanatmakam. We will see it. Ruksha Tikshnoshna Vishada Sukshma Rupa Gunolbanam Daha Bha Varna Prakasha Pajanatmakam Dravyam Apyam. Sorry, Agneyam. That is the meaning. Now we will see the words. Ruksham. Ruksham is the opposite of Sneham. So Sneham was something which facilitated keeping things together. Keeping things together. So its opposite means something which facilitates keeping things apart because of its dry nature. It denies to bind, merge, or stay close. So that roughness maybe, because of the abhava of sneha, that is ruksha. Then tikshnam. Tikshnam again is a physical property which may be understood as the sharpness. Then comes ushna. We have seen Shidam earlier. Similarly, here also the ushnam should be understood as a sparsha vishesham, and which is inherent to Tejas or Agni. Then comes Vishadam. Vishadam represents the clarity, how clear it is. Nirmalata. That is what is meant by Vishadam. Then comes Sukshma. Sukshmam. Again, I think it is the opposite of Sthulata. Sthulam we met with the Prithvi, and that was contributing heavily for the Murtada, the grossness, the manifestability of a Parthiva Dravya. So when it comes to Sukshma, it obviously indicates the tendency to become formless, or the way in which the Murtada in the Parthiva Dravya was present. In that same scale, on the other end, we meet with the Sukshmata. So that indicates the fineness or the subtleness of the particles involved, and also the lack or for the density of the particles, how less the density is. All these things can be understood by the word sukshma. Then we find rupa gunolpanada. Rupam. Rupam is chakshurmatra grahyo guno rupam. That is how it is explained by Tarka Sangraham. Chakshurmatra grahya gunaha rupam. And it is generally it is supposed to be prithvi jala tejo vritti, and in the prithvi it is explained actually that three types: prithvi, jala, tejo vritti. In the prithvi there are 7 types, saptavidham, and in jalam it is abhaswara shuklam, and in tejas it is bhaswara shuklam. That anyway, I think in our context we need not go to that sort of details. We have to understand that, okay, these are the ideas revolving around the concept of rupam, and this is how these ideas were conceived in Ayurveda and modified or improvised to suit the needs of our particular context. Okay. Then, so that is how the Agneya Dravya is explained by Vakbhada. Now, we will find the karmas. Agneyam Daha bhavarna prakasha pajanatmakam. Daha bhavarna prakasha pajanatmakam. Atmagam, pajanatmagam. Atmagam indicates that these are the nature. Here, that is the word, that is the meaning. These are the nature. But by that nature, actually, what we are trying to convey is these are the karmas. These are the karmas. What we explain, what we expect in an Agneya Dravya. Now, what are the things? Daham. It is a familiar word. Daham, the sense of burning. Then bha. Bha means it is very much related to the complexion of the body, brightness. The brightness. Similarly, varnam means again the color. And prakasham shows, indicates the sort of vyakti-karanam, or how much illuminated that desham or that particular area is. These three things, bha, varnam and prakasham, they are closely related with the manifestation of the sharira in terms of its complexion. Then we find pajanam. Pajanam means pakam. So the transformation of any apakwa to a pakwa is known as pajanam. Transformation of any apakwa bhava to pakwa bhava is known as pajanam. So even anna pajanam is a part of it. Sometimes in a different context, maybe a vrana shobham is becoming apakkum, becoming pakkum. That is also a pajanam. So all these things are to be understood in pajanam, which is a karma of an Agneya Dravya. So this is a total idea about how an Agneya Dravya behaves. Say if we take something extra from Sushruta, especially his interest in connecting these things with the Rasolpatti, then or Rasa Nishpatti, we will see that he observes Agneya Dravya as having Ishad Amla Lavanam Kaduga Rasaprayam. Ishad Amla Lavanam Kaduga Rasaprayam. Very interesting. And also he notes that this Agneya Dravya is Visheshataha cha Urdhagadi Swabhavam. Visheshata, we find it in a different context, isn't it? Dravyam Urdhagamam Tatra Prayo Agni Pavanolkadam. Okay, so here it is mentioned Visheshataha cha Urdhagadi Swabhavam. Similarly, in the karma of an Agneya Dravya, maybe because of his speciality or his special interest in certain areas, another karma which he has included is dharanam. Dharanam, pakva shobha vidharanam, or that sort of a dharana property is added with the Agneya Dravya. That is very interesting. Now we will find the fourth Dravya. That is Vayavya Dravya. Vayavyam Ruksha Visada Laghu Sparsha Gunolbanam. Vayavyam Ruksha Visada Laghu Sparsha Gunolbanam. Raukshya Laghava Vaishadya Vichara Glanikarakam. Raukshya Laghava Vaishadya Vichara Glanikarakam. Vayavyam Ruksha Visada Lagusparsha Gunolbana Raukshya Laghava Vaishadya Vichara Glanikarakam. Okay, I think we will look into the details. Ruksham we have already seen. Vayavyam. Vayavyam means Vayu predominant Dravyam. Ruksham and Visadam we have already seen in our previous explanations. Then we meet with the Laghu. Laghu is the opposite of Guru. Guru we have learned. And we related it with the weight, mass of an object. So here it will be the other side. That means the something which causes lakhavam, lightness. So the property which facilitate lightness is known as lakhu. And next is sparsha gunalbanam. So it is very simple. I think vayavya means ruksham, vishadam we have already seen. Lakhu is this one, and then sparsha gunalbanam. Sparsha gunolbanam, sparsham, that is the gunam here. Tvagindriya matra grahyo gunaha sparsha. Tvagindriya matra grahyo gunaha sparsha. Satrivithaha, that is how the Tarkikas classify it. Satrivithaha. What is that trivitham? Shita, Ushna, Anushna Shita Bhedad. Shita, Ushna, Anushna Shita Bhedad, Trivithaha. And there is a distribution pattern. Prithivyap tejo vayu vrittihi. Prithivyap tejo vayu vrittihi. Tatra shitaha jale. Jale shitasparsha. Ushnas tejasi. Ushnaspashatvam in tejas. Anushna shitaha prithvi. Anushna shitaha and vayu also. Anushna shitaha prithvi vayuho. So Prithvi is Anushna Shitam, which was not mentioned in our text. It is not coming under our discussion point. But for Tarkikas, they have observed that Prithvi, so Vayu is also Anushna Shitam according to Tarkika. But I think it is, we Ayurvedic people differ a little bit in that context. We consider Vayu as Shitam for our own reasons. So that is about the sparsha, and vayu is also a point of discussion in Tarka Sangraha. Ruparahita sparshavan vayuhu. I'm not going to the details. So such a vayavya dravya, that means having the ruksha, vishada, lekhu, sparsha gunolbanam properties. How does it influence the body? Raukshya, laghava, vaishadya, vichara, glanikarakam. Raukshya, laghava, vaishadya, vichara, glanikarakam. What is it? We will see. Raukshya. We already saw what rukshada is. So the outcome of a ruksha guna in sharira is the generation of rukshata or raukshyam. That means some sort of a parushyam, the absence of sneham, and the resulting tendency to disintegrate in the level of kanas, particles. It may be very solid from the outside, but as far as the connectivity of the particles are concerned, it is not like sneha. That ardrada, the kledam, that is lost. That is how it is known as ruksha or raukshyam. Lakhavam means the density or the thickness that comes down and the body is becoming light. That is lakhavam. And vaishadyam. Vaishadyam means it becomes more clean. Where do we feel, where do we understand this this cleanness? Vaktra vaishadyam. Sometimes we find as the property of doing gandusha, isn't it? So that the property or the outcome of this vishada gunam manifests as removal of upalepam or upakledam in different ashayas, in different srotas, in different avayavas. So that is how this vaishadyam is perceived. Then next is vicharam. Vicharam. What is vicharam? if you look at the Hemadri commentary, you will find Vividha Cheshtaha, different types of actions. Or mobility, different types of motions. Chalanam. Indu explains it as dhadu vahanam, that movement of dhadus inside. Sometimes we will find in some local commentaries, we find certain terms like dhadu sanjaranam, that is dhadu vahanam. Actually, what is vicharam? Vicharam may be the sum total of all these aspects, what we were explaining. That means the vividha cheshta, dhadu sanjaranam, dhadu vahanam, different types of mobility or motions happening. So all these things can be together accommodated under the term vicharam. So something which promotes or encourages is known as, of this sort of vicharam is known as vayavidrivyam. Then next is glani. Glani is a common word, isn't it? Glani means the sort of exhaustion or tiredness, fatigue. All these things can be included under that heading. Here, because of the lack of sneha, there is no upachaya. There is no upachaya in the body. And rukshada increases. So obviously, the subjective feeling will be of heavy exhaustion. That is known as glani. So vayavidrivya causes glani of the sharira. So that is about the vayavidrivya. Again, if you look at the documentation by Sushruta, we will find that this vayavidrivya is ishatiktam and visheshataha kashayam. Ishatiktam visheshataha kashayam idi vayaviyam. And he also observes that this is virukshanakaram and vicharanakaram cha. Virukshanakaram, vicharanakaram cha. And glapanam is also noted by Sushruta. And these terms are explained in a little bit different style by Dalhana. Glapanam is explained, glani is explained as avrishyatva by Dalhana, which makes sense. Avrishyatva. And vicharanam, Dalhana takes it into a mental level. Manasaha anega vigalpakaranam vicharanam. Some sort of a confusion. That is known as the vikalpa. So that sort of a confusion, that is known as vicharanam. So I am just mentioning all these points because these are the way in which these words or these satnyas are conceived by different authors and commentators. That's all. Then certain words are specially highlighted by Vakbhada in Sangraha. That just at least two words. That means Vyavayi and Vikashi. These two properties are attributed to Vayavya Dravyas by Vakbhada in Ashtanga Sangraha. Vyavayi and actually they are not included in the Vinshadi Guna, but we very frequently see these things in our textbook, isn't it? Whenever certain properties are explained like that of maybe Visha, Madhya, all these things, we find these terms. And when the mechanism of action of Shodhana Dravyas are explained, like the how the Vamana Dravya works, then also we find that okay, Tatra Ushna Tishna Sukshma Vyavai Vikashini Aushadhani. So even though they are not coming under the Gurvadi Guna list, they are frequently used. And Vakbhada in that context actually is not accepting them as gunas. Vyavai and Vikashi are considered as Saras Tikshna Prakarshas, the Prakarshatvam of Sara and Tikshna. But still, I think instead of using Sara and Tikshna, he is using Vyavai and Vikashi in more than one situation. So that just, I think, a passing passing mentioning. That's all. Okay. So here also, I think they need not be considered as, especially when considered as gunas, they represents the physical characteristics alone. Okay. Now we will switch over to the description of Nabhasadravya. Nabhasadravya, Akashiyam, Nabhasam, Sukshma Vishada, Laghu, Shabda Gunolbanam, Saushirya Lakhavakaram. Nabhasam, Sukshma Vishada, Laghu, Shabda Gunolbanam, Saushirya Lakhavakaram. So we find Sukshma, Vishada, Laghu, Shabda. Most of these terms are familiar. Sukshma we have already explained, and here in this context of Nabhasadravyam, the Sukshmada very specifically represents its asankhādatva, isn't it? Asankhādatva or apradikhadatva. In Charaka Samhita, at one point, we can find the five bhutas are explained as having the characteristics of Gharadrava Chaloshnattvam Bhujalanila Tejasam Agashasya Apradikhatah. So here that Apradikhadatvam is also embedded because of its formlessness or Alpaswarupata. Formlessness means not absence of form but Alpaswarupata, or the reluctance to become formed, manifested. That is also included in this Sukshma. All the other sapnyas are already explained, but Shabda Gunolbanada is there. Shabdam is the Vishesha Guna of Akasha, and always this Akasham is a controversial character. It is Ekam, it is Vibhu, it is Nityam. All these things can be seen attached as designations of Akasha. I'm not going to the details of that Vibhutvam or Nityatvam of Akasham. Whereas Shabda is explained or is mentioned as Shrotragrahyo Gunaha Shabdaha Akashamatra Vrittihi. Shrotragrahyo Gunaha Shabdaha Akashamatra Vrittihi. So that is about Akasham. So such a Nabhasadravya, when consumed, results in Saushirya Lakhavakaram. Saushirya Lakhavakaram. Saushiryam. Sushirata. Sushirata. That is an important idea. Sushiram is a hole or an empty space. So it is Saushirya Karam in the body, means there are multiple meanings. I think to make the Srotas, different types of Srodasas, if I use it as a plural, are the formation of such Srotas is actually the outcome of Akasha. Tatra ghad ghani, Sharira. Tatra ghad ghani. In the from Akasha evolves the Srodasas. Tatra ghad ghani dehesmin Shrotram Shabdo Viviktada. We can find it in Sharirasthan. So that is related with this Saushirya Karatvam. But interestingly, that is against the Nibidada of Dhadus, Nibidada of Prithvi. So when Agasham is Saushirya Karam, that means wherever this Akashiya Dravya or Nabhasa Dravya is acting upon, the compactness which is otherwise contributed by the Sneha and the Sthira Guna of the Prithvi, that is getting compromised. This is what is happening in Vadakopam. When we look at the Vadakopa Nidanas, you will find that, okay, Dhadukshaya Karaihi Vayu Kupyadi Adinishevitaihi. In that context, if you look at Charaka Samhita, we will find that, okay, these Nidanas are Saushirya Karani. So that Saushirya Karatvam, here you can connect it with the Saushirya Laghava. And it should be connected otherwise to Vayu Agasha Pradhanatvam of Vada Dosha or Vayu Dosha. So it is the capacity or the outcome of action of Nabhasa Dravya in the body wherein emptiness is formed. So emptiness can be understood in two ways. In the very gross way, that means the formation of srotasas, larger, grosser and subtler. And another is Sushira Karatvam within the very stuff of the dhadu, where the dhadu is running deficient of upachaya. So Srodassu Rikteshu Bhrisham Tanyeva Purayan. So that can be connected, that can be read between these lines. So Saushiryam means the emptiness or the hollowness or the Anibidada. Next is Laghava, which we have already discussed. So Saushirya Laghava Karam. Saushirya Laghava Karam. This Saushirya Laghava Karatvam is accepted by all others for an Abhasa Dravya. But interestingly, certain other properties are also attributed to it. For example, in Charaka Samhita, we find Mrudutvam is attributed to Nabhasa Dravya, and so it causes Mardavam of the Sharira. These are all different perspectives, that's all. One is perfectly right, the other one is perfectly wrong. Not that way. These are all some leads to discuss and or to think. Shishya Buddhi Vigasartham. Need not conclude many a times. And this Sushirata, Saushiryam is there. Saushiryam is there by Charaka also. Slakshnada is attributed to Nabhasa Dravya by Charaka. Slakshna. Sushrata also gives that property to Nabhasa Dravya. Slakshnam. Mrudutva is also given by Sushruta also. Vyavayitvam is attributed by Sushruta. Viviktada is attributed by Sushruta. Viviktam. Slakshnam here means, in this context, Slakshnam means the delicateness. So Nabhasa Dravyam is very delicate. And Viviktada shows the Pavitrada or the purity. Practically there is very little thing to be impure So obviously it becomes more pure. Viviktata. So this is how the idea of a Nabhasa Dravya is conceived. So with that we reach a point where all the 5 Dravyas, Parthivam, Apyam, Agneyam, Vayavyam and Nabhasam are explained in the context of our Dravya Vijnana. Actually, there is space for discussing these gunas, the different types of explanations, the perspectives of different authors, a comparison of these ideas. Many things can be discussed here, and further elaboration of the each type of dravya can be taken further forward. But I think it will be very tough for an online platform to communicate all these very fine ideas. Maybe at one point of time, like we had a offline meeting in Pune in a couple of months back. Sometimes later, as an annual function of our Ayurveda Vachana Samuh or something like that, we will sit together physically and then we will discuss all those finer ideas later. So with this, I think the next is a very important idea. Jagatyevam anaushadham na kinjit vidyade dravyam vasannanartha yogayoho. That I think we cannot complete here today. It's almost 8:55, so we may not be able to complete it if we start today. So we will we will discuss it in our next session. So I think we will conclude here. Vaidya Prasham has asked not a question but a point that whether the manda guna refer to speed of a dravya. I think maybe it is another way of seeing it, that's all. But in our context, that need not be very relevant. That's all. So thus we conclude today's session. Nilesh, are you there?
Yes, Prasad sir.
Okay, okay. Shall we conclude today's
Thank
session?
yes, sir. Thank you so much for your valuable thoughts and inputs. I think we will meet in our next session.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Shubharatri to all
Thank
of you.
Shubhratri, sir.